I'm Chris Moll, I'm the head of film at Creative England. Distribution, whether you're deciding to do that direct or through third parties, is all about getting your product, a film, a game, to the end user, the customer, the person who is going to watch, play, consume, pay for that piece of work. Now, in some senses, that end user will want to pay for it, and in some situations, it may not be appropriate to pay for them because actually you've been commissioned to produce that work, and it might be for a broadcaster who ultimately is offering a free-to-air service, the BBC being the most obvious one. So you have to decide ultimately where you sit in that area.
I'm Stella Briley from Electric Sky. I'm the head of acquisitions, and we are a television distribution company based in Brighton with offices in London and Hong Kong. What we try to do is to represent as many rights as we possibly can and exploit them into as many territories and as many different platforms as we can. And that can be terrestrial or cable television, it can be digital VOD platforms, it might be airline rights, it might be DVD rights, but all of these have a worth, and we try and exploit and make as much income as we can for those producers.
If you're seeking return for your investors, and that could be public service investors as well as private sector investors, they're going to be driven by, okay, what is the end user's relationship to the product? There's a great analogy I always use, particularly with theatrical filmmakers, is you might say that people want to see your film, but will they go to see it?
My name is Jasper Sohal. I'm Head of Games and Digital at Creative England, and I'm the Programme Director for our Games Lab initiative, which aims to provide both business support and investment funding to companies in the West Midlands and the South West. In the world of digital goods, so games and apps and even desktop software, distribution is largely platform dependent. So it's something that companies have to consider very early on in their design brief for their product.
One of the most important things in terms of distribution is making sure that your clearances are all in place. It's very important to think about things like music clearances, archive film that may be included in a programme, or any kind of clearances or permissions that you may need from your contributors in order to exploit those rights internationally.
My name is David Leach. I'm the Commercial Director of the Tinopolis Group, which is one of the larger independent television groups. Distributors can bring a lot of expertise as well as cash, so a partnership with them might involve everything from upfront revenue to put into your development pot to generate new programming, through to advice on what the international market is looking for, and suggestions about how to put together the financing for projects. So it's worth considering having a partnership with a distributor of your content, whether it's on a case-by-case basis or whether it's even over a year or two or a number of projects. It can prove very beneficial to get that expertise and even that cash.
In the case of gaming, there are obviously competing platforms which are vying for content. They have very, very different platforms on which you can actually distribute. So again, it's a key decision that you have to make early on in your design cycle. In the case of apps, you have two very large marketplaces, one being Android and one being iOS, which is controlled by Apple. And although there's some synergies between the two platforms, there's a very, very different statistics behind the reality of what kind of apps are successful on what platform. And again, this comes down to the kind of app that you're developing. You have to consider the evidence and the research that's already taken place about what apps work best on either platform.
The conventional DVD distribution model is changing quite rapidly as the DVD market becomes almost non-existent now. The hard copy DVD is far less of a selling format now, and the digital rights in that are becoming more important. So the DVD companies that we have dealt with in the past are now looking to take on the DTO rights, that's the download to own rights. Although the download to own fees may not be quite so lucrative to start with, because obviously it's per click, so they have to accumulate, eventually there is still an income to be had there, but it's a different model from when it was a straightforward advance based on a number of copies that would be sold.
I think the key thing with distribution is that you want to consider all distribution platforms very early on. It's very difficult to retroactively release on a platform that you hadn't considered in the development cycle. With that comes a lot of questions. Do you want to remain exclusive to a specific platform? If you do, what are the benefits of that? Do you want to be ubiquitous across all devices? If so, then that requires a lot more development expenditure on part of the company. All these different factors you should consider very early on, and that's probably my key advice, is to not think that you can very quickly jump from one platform to the next, because you'll actually find that to be very disruptive in your development cycle.